everyone, welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. Welcome to the latest installment in our innovation series. Joining me today once again is Professor Patrick Hosein, who we had on the show earlier this year to kick off our discussion on innovation. Professor Hosein is a highly regarded educator and has been a presence in the electrical engineering, computer science, and IT departments of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago. He's also the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Network Information Center and the Director of TTLAB, a research laboratory also in Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Hosein has worked for several major telecommunications companies, including Bell Labs, AT&T, and Ericsson, and has won several awards and holds over 30 patents, many of which in some way underpin the telecommunications services we enjoy today. So today we'll be discussing TTLAB, but more importantly, connecting research to innovation and the development of real-life solutions. Prof, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Michelle, and thanks again for having me. I look forward to our discussion again.
Okay, so let's just get the ball rolling with TTLAB. What is it and how is it organized?
Okay, so let me kind of give a brief history about TTLAB. It roughly started about 4 years ago. And the reason behind it is what happened is one of our students had gone abroad on a NASA internship. And when he returned to the department gave him, trivial duties such as website development, etc. And I saw that we have this bright student doing these, simple tasks. So what I decided to do is take him under my wing. And now he's an undergrad. So I sort of trained him, and we started doing research together. And within a year, he was able to publish, to have 4 publications.
Wow!
And using this together with, of course, he was a bright guy. He got accepted to do an MPhil at Cambridge University. So he went there, and after graduating, he got a job at Google. So that was the first member of TTLAB, and so the idea behind TTLAB basically is to take bright students, whether within UWI or returning students who have gone abroad on government scholarships, or even people from industry who would like to do research, as well as diaspora, to take these people and have a multidisciplinary environment to do research in various fields. So again, the intent is to provide these researchers with a friendly environment to be able to do research and publish, so that they can apply to grad schools, etc. And also we focus on industrial research, meaning applied research, so they also get industry experience as well. So that basically is how TTLAB started, and right now we are up to, I have about 25 people, a combination of students and diaspora, etc., working together on various areas.
Okay. Are all of the individuals physically located in Trinidad, or are they associated but operate remotely?
Most are in Trinidad, of course, because the majority are students, undergrad and postgrad students. But of course, there are people abroad. We collaborate with people in the US, with Korea, in South Korea. And I myself, because I travel a lot, I communicate online with most of my students. Actually, even when I'm in Trinidad, I most of my communications is online, because instead of wasting an hour in traffic, it's easier to just. So the communication is basically virtual, but we get a lot done.
That's wonderful. But I could only surmise, therefore, that with probably for the undergrads, it may not necessarily be so bad because they are full-time students and almost as if their expenses, much of their expenses are being taken care of one way or the other by nature of the fact that they're in university. But for persons who probably have graduated, are coming back and looking to whatever their next move is, how does TT Labs, or can TT Labs support them financially in terms of, I guess, whether it's a stipend or salary, and how is TT Labs funded?
Okay, so initially, TTLAB actually provided funding for some students. It provided a monthly stipend, etc. But because it started growing so large, my company, TTNIC, couldn't continue that sort of support. So what TTNIC, my company, does support is travel to conferences.
Okay.
So, for instance, anybody within TT Lab, as long as they have a paper accepted at a conference, they get funding once per year to attend a conference. But that's the only funding we provide.
Mm-hmm.
What I've decided to do instead is have students become interns of companies. Company would provide a stipend to these students. So, for instance, we've done that with Massey Technologies. We're in the process of doing it with TSTT. They want as many as 8 interns, and we are in talks with Digicel as well. So the idea would be to have these companies hire these students as interns under my supervision, and they would do research for the company together with the research they do for their thesis or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason for this approach is that these students, for instance, if a postgrad student who needs to have some sort of funding, normally they would teach or become an instructor, etc., in order to get funds. But with this approach, they get to do research for their thesis, as well as industrial research, as well as be able to get compensated and not have to worry about doing other stuff to get funds on a monthly basis.
Right. Okay. Now you said that TT Labs is a multidisciplinary research that it does, but are there any specific areas that you would consider TT Lab specialty, or that it probably there are certain areas that it focuses on as opposed to others?
Okay, so the way I choose topics or areas is based on what the students want to do. So if a student comes to me and says, I like to do research, whether it's for their thesis or otherwise, I sit with them and find out what their areas of interest are, as well as what their expertise is, and try to come up with a problem in their particular area. So, which means that we work on a wide range of areas in electrical engineering, computer science, mathematics, statistics, and now these are the areas I can supervise in. Of course, many times they would propose something working in an area that I'm not an expert in, so I would have to be the one to learn the background for that area.
Right.
So the approach is different to how research is typically done by a lot of faculty members. Typically, with a faculty member, you go to them, they would be working in a particular area, and they would assign a problem in that area to the student, which is fine as well. But many times the student may not be interested in that particular area, but they do it because they're getting funding, or they can do their thesis in that area. But my feeling is that unless somebody really enjoys what they do, they won't do as well as they could. So in terms of areas, yeah, we work because of the high interest in things like data science and machine learning and AI, etc. Most of the work we do is in that area. We also do a lot of work in operations research, optimization, process optimization, etc. We do work in wireless communications, which is my main area of expertise, as well as some other side areas like smart grids and IoT and cybersecurity, etc.
Mm. Okay, and are there any like projects currently that you all are pursuing, or I guess researching now, that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. In fact, one good way to demonstrate what we do and how we do it would be, what I could probably do is just have a quick overview of the publications we've done for this year, 2019.
Right.
Okay, so in 2019 so far we have 15 publications. Some of them have been in journals, some in conferences which have been presented already, and a few are in conferences yet to come. I think we have about 5 or 6 next month, in fact. So what I'll do is just kind of briefly go through these, because each of them kind of gives an example of how we operate in terms of what type of research we do, how we collaborate with other institutions, or how we collaborate with industry, etc.
Okay.
So if it's okay with you, I'll just kind of go through some of these, and it gives you an idea of what we do and why we do it. Okay?
Yes.
So next month, we have a paper called Recommender System for Long-Term Profit Optimization. And this is in a conference called Rexis 2019. Rexis is short for Recommender Systems. Now, a recommender system is sort of like what Netflix does when they recommend movies to you. They take into account various information about yourself as well as other people similar to you, and they come up with recommendations as to what movie would be suitable for you. So this Rexis 2019 is the top conference in this particular area. So we will be presenting in that conference, and actually our paper has been nominated for Best Paper Award in a workshop. Now, this particular piece of research actually started as some work we were doing with for Sagicor, which is I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sagicor, the insurance company.
Yes.
Right. So we were doing some work for them on recommended systems for their insurance products. And we actually, we solved their problem for them, but we also turned it into a more theoretical problem in terms of providing recommendations, not only for the best product, but also in terms of maximizing long-term profit. So this is a case where we started off doing research for a particular company, but we're also able to take it and make it more theoretical and submit to a very good conference. Next one is on intrusion detection and avoidance for heterogeneous cluster of websites. So this is in cybersecurity. And the reason we did this is because my company, TTLAB, provides free domains and hosting for local schools. And so right now we host over 100 schools, and they are not very well protected because the school sites are managed by the IT people at the school. So what we decided to do is use machine learning to detect intrusions, hack attempts, and then to blacklist particular IP addresses, etc. So in this particular case, this work was really done for my company, and this is also in an upcoming conference next month. Next one is analysis of herd behavior and stock prices using machine learning, and this is on financial analysis. So this is work done by a student for his MSc thesis in collaboration with the Department of Management Studies. So here it is an illustration of collaboration within UB, which is, to be honest, is kind of rare. We don't have as many collaborations within UB as we should be, or we should have. Not only within the faculty, but among faculties. So I am encouraging students to collaborate with other faculties or departments. Next one is in network neutral alternative to free basics. And this is some work I'm interested in, because of management of .tt. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with network neutrality, but it's a big topic these days. And so I had this is a collaboration with a student who is at a research lab in South Korea. So this would be a case of a diaspora working with me. This is an ex-student who completed her PhD in Korea and is working at a research lab there. So again, this would, a case of a collaboration with a foreign institution as well as diaspora. Next one is a metric for a fair comparison of ISPs. And here again, this was done basically for me. I was trying to figure out which ISP to use, and there was no easy way to do it because of all the different, offers they made, etc. So this comes down to a very simple metric that could be used to compare ISPs, and actually we have the comparison online at a site called qsurvey.lab.tt. And I won't go into details, but it's a very interesting method we use to do the comparison. In fact, the local telecom regulator, TAT, is interested in using it as well.
Okay.
So we plan to have some discussions with them as to how they can incorporate it. It includes some additional stuff that I didn't, it's not in this paper, but the idea is to come up with a way to collect quality crowdsourced data as opposed to just having people randomly provide input. Next one is on internet resilience in small island states. And this is in collaboration with Kim Malaliu, who I believe you may have interviewed in the past. She's in electrical engineering. So she has been working on disaster recovery for the Caribbean region. And so she had brought up this issue about whether the internet is resilient in some of the small island states. And I mentioned some of the issues we may have. So this is based on that discussion. And this work is also of interest to Digicel. They plan to incorporate some of this into their operations.
Right.
Next is on the sizing of security personnel staff while accounting for overtime. This is work we actually did for UE. So we actually do pro bono work for UE as well. We've done it in the past for the library. And here we were asked to look at scheduling of security staff. But of course, we went way beyond what they asked for. And we did some additional, use some additional machine learning techniques to do some more advanced work. And this was done in collaboration with two PhDs in the math department. And again, this would be published, I believe, next month.
Mm-hmm.
Next one is a stochastic dynamic programming heuristics for influence maximization, revenue optimization. This is a journal paper, but it's a very theoretical work being done by a PhD student in the math department who is working under my supervision.
Right.
Next is spatio-temporal clustering for optimizing time-sensitive product deliveries. And this was actually a problem we worked on for Massey Gas. And actually, the original problem came from Massey Gas in Jamaica, which is interesting. But so we worked on optimizing, minimizing transport costs for gas delivery, etc. And we were able to reduce the transportation cost by as much as 5%. This is another journal paper. Next is optimizing car imports in small island states. And this was done for Massey Auto. And this is another journal paper. The issue here is, I'm not sure if it's the same in Jamaica, but in Trinidad, for instance, recently I tried to get a car, and most of the places you go to, or several of them, if you go to, they say you have to wait for it because they have to order it, and it'll take 2 or 3 months to get here. So this paper looks at predicting what people would need and being able to do a better job at ordering cars so that you would have so there's a higher probability of having a particular car on lot when somebody if somebody needs it.
Okay, Prof, a question. As you've been going through it, I guess there's a question that has been coming to me in the sense that many of the topics and the research that has been done probably was born out of some real life need, and therefore luckily one has been able to create or propose a solution that could be applied to a real life situation. But there seems to be a distinction, or I guess a gap between what might be required for real life and then some of the more theoretical research that TTLAB does. How and can one marry those two things? And to some degree, I guess they are complementary, and one requires the other, or they both require each other. But I'm trying to reconcile them in my own head. I don't know if I am making myself clear, or you need further explanation.
Well, I can kind of give you the process we go through. Like, so for instance, when we work with Massey, we would sit with them and get some data from them and find out what particular problems they have and try to solve their problem. So if we look at the case of Massey Gas, they had this issue with they deliver these they go to these customers and they refill their gas, and they were thinking about putting sensors on the gas tanks to be able to determine when they need to go, etc. We said, no, you don't need to do that. We could predict accurately when they would need gas and be able to schedule. So that was a real problem we solved for them. Now, what we were also able to do is make it sufficiently theoretical that we could publish it. And so it satisfies both needs, meaning that the company gets a solution and we get a publication out of it.
Right.
So this is what we tried to do. We solve real problems. Now, in some cases, some of the theoretical stuff is just theoretical, and those are done for like PhD students who need to have really theoretical work with mathematical analyses for their PhD. But yeah, as I said, so we try to balance the two: theoretical, practical, and in many cases, as I said, we take a simple problem that somebody may have come to us, we solve it for them, but then we introduce some complexity in it, making it more generic, for instance, and solve an associated problem.
Okay.
So like this gas thing, for instance, that problem is a generic problem that has been around for a while. And we believe we have some theoretical results that we could apply to it. And that would become a journal paper. So I have another student looking at a more general version of the problem. And we will come up with some theoretical proofs and submit that. So yeah, so to answer your question, we try to be both practical and theoretical. And yeah, I don't know if that's what you were looking for.
Yeah, I guess I think a couple of things, because luckily I guess there is a practical work that TTLAB does, because I can easily, when I was sitting down to prep and just thinking through the whole, construct of TTLAB, I can see that the average person, and probably not even just the average person, people who work in industry themselves or in business, can be quite intimidated by research and an entity like TTLAB, and probably not sure what exactly it does, and whether or not it's just I almost want to say, think of it almost like an excuse for people to sit down and just be geeks, but not necessarily do practical and real life and tangible things. So I'm glad that there is a practical aspect to TTLAB, and it's not just purely theoretical and academic research that it's doing. But I mean, I guess the question, and I mean, I'm wondering whether or not sometimes when people hear about TTLABs or even about what you do, whether there is a sense as to not knowing exactly, or being able to put into context rather, why research is so important.
And that's a very good point, because many times we go into a company, and by the way, except for one company, we haven't actually approached the company. The company actually approached us to come and help them. And in many cases, we would go in and they really have no idea of what they need to be solved. They may be working on something. For instance, again, the Massey Gas case, they've been looking at a solution for something, and we were able to propose something that was much cheaper and solve their problem for them. So, but in many cases, they're not sure what they need to have solved. And what we would do is sit with them, try to understand the operations, try to get some data from them, and then take that information and show them how we could improve efficiency or increase revenue. So for instance, in the case of the Massey Gas project, we quantified the gains to them. So we show that there would be a 5% reduction in transportation cost. In other, another case would have been Massey Auto, for instance, and we showed that the approach for a given budget, the same budget they used, would improve the probability of having a particular car on the lot, etc. So what is important to them is that we quantify some benefit to them so that they don't think, oh, well, these people are just doing some research. It doesn't help us in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, because I've spent most of my life in industry, I know what these managers are looking for. They know, yeah, we can do some fancy research, but how does it help the bottom line?
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever we work with these companies, we try to formulate the problem in such a way that we could quantify some benefit, whether the benefit means increased profits, reduced cost, increased efficiency, etc. So, but it is a difficult thing to do sometimes. Trying to convince them, okay, well, you need to you can improve efficiency in this way, because remember, in many cases they've been operating for years and nothing has gone wrong. So they seem to think, well, we've been doing this efficiently for so long, and without realizing that it's not as efficient as it could be, especially with newer technologies. So that's where we have to go in and demonstrate to them. And so what we would do is we would focus on one particular problem and come up with a solution and build a prototype as well. So we would build some sort of a proof of concept or a prototype that would demonstrate what can be done. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your questions, but it is, especially when it comes to machine learning, data science. A lot of companies see data science as just being business intelligence, meaning that you display some nice graphs using Excel or Tableau or one of these tools.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their impression of what machine learning or artificial intelligence is, which it is not. That's just a very superficial way of using it. So demonstrating to them that we actually go into their data and extract important information and convert that important information into something of benefit to them, that's the more difficult part. And so that modeling and using the machine learning techniques, etc., is where we are useful.
Mm.
Again, some companies, because they are not quite familiar about this whole area, they would go ahead and lease, for instance, IBM Watson, which is a very expensive machine data analytics tool,
Mm-hmm.
without understanding that that's just a tool. You need to have the people to come up with the appropriate models to be able to identify how you want to quantify benefit, etc. And that's the 90% of the problem. The tool itself, there are lots of tools around to solve the problem itself.
Definitely. Okay, and just circling back to innovation more specifically, and I was wondering how, and probably you have come across it as well. How can one ensure that one is pushing the envelope at TTLAB with regard to innovation? And I understand that one may not necessarily want to be innovative for innovative sake, but I think there still needs to be a sense of trying to explore and to conceptualize things in new and different ways. How is that managed? I guess probably for you personally and for the students and so on you oversee.
Okay, so innovation, there are different levels of innovation.
Mm-hmm.
You could come up with a simple problem to solve and develop an app, and it's relatively innovative. But whether or not you'll make millions on that is questionable. Now, if you're looking at innovation along the lines of Facebook and Google, that requires deep knowledge of the area.
Mm-hmm.
So my feeling is that we first need to educate our students up to the level where they could actually compete at the international level, and then we have to do research at the international level. Then we could innovate at the international level. So one thing I did was I started a MSc in data science 3 years ago, and the intent was to really start producing more data scientists locally. The next thing I did was this start up this TTLAB in order to encourage research. And we now have undergrad students coming to me and saying, oh, I want to do research, and how do I go about doing it? So again, the idea is to encourage this research environment and let students know that they are capable of it. It's not something that only people at Google and Microsoft can do. We can do it as well. The third step, of course, would be innovation. And there are signs that we are heading in that direction. So, for instance, B Mobile, which is our one of our local cellular providers, had a competition earlier this year on innovation and coding, etc. And the prize was 100,000 TT dollars. And 3 of TTLAB students decided to enter, and they won.
Mm-hmm.
And they were competing with other entrepreneurs and a lot of other local companies who you would have thought would have been able to come up with better ideas. But the difference being that my students, sort of trained them into thinking differently and being able to take information from different areas. And so what they did was they combined different data sets from B Mobile and use that in an innovative way. So I'm hoping that this continues, that the students that come out of TTLAB have the ability to be more creative and be able to come up with novel solutions. Now, in terms of competing globally, we have publications at some of these top-notch conferences, as I mentioned, Rexis, for instance. But it will take some time for us to get to the point where we are able to do research comparable with some of these big universities or companies abroad.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we have students who are capable. You take these same students and you put them in a university abroad, and they would excel.
Right.
The difference is that we need to encourage them and provide them with the same sort of environment that they would have abroad. Now, the other thing is, of course, once you provide that environment, even if they leave, and as I said, some of them leave, even if they leave because they appreciate what they experience in TTLAB, they are willing to help. So, like this guy who is now at Google, he came back about 2 months ago and gave a workshop as a Google employee.
Mm-hmm.
We have people doing stuff with NVIDIA, for instance. So it's a combination of things. It's not only providing the opportunity to do research, but we want to do it in such a way that these same students will come back and help us. Even if they are not in Trinidad or in the Caribbean, they can help us. And I think these are the people we need, because these are the people who know what's the novel stuff being done abroad, and they can help us determine, okay, this idea we have, is it novel enough to make a difference? So in terms of innovation, we are trying to push in that direction. We also have filed one patent, but this was done in South Korea because the type of work was on pricing for cellular networks, and it would not have been something that the local companies would have used. And so the collaboration was with this institute in Korea, and they, a university in Korea, and they actually filed it.
Okay. So recognizing, as much as TTLabs is doing cutting edge work, and I guess the students and the clients, the industry partners that you have, appreciate the quality of the work that is being done. What then do you think are some of the factors that has made TTLAB a success, at least to this point?
Okay, but I think the major thing is the fact that students get to do research because they enjoy doing it as opposed to having to do it, and they get to do it from any, as I said, we have undergrads doing research, postgrads doing research, people who have left the university and are working in industry. They do research with us. In fact, TTLAB has this something I call a reverse internship, where the company would give an employee maybe 4 hours per week to work on a project with me under my supervision. So in that way, the employee works on something related to their work, but it's a sufficiently high level that they could publish it. So yeah, so we have that as well. But coming back to your original question, the fact that students get to work in their particular area, something they enjoy doing, the flexibility, I don't pressure students. It's up to them to achieve what they can and when they can. And of course, the good ones are the ones who push papers out, like every few months. And again, what I've found is a lot of the returning scholars, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the returning scholars actually contact TTLAB directly because they've heard of the fact that they could come back to Trinidad and continue doing the type of research they were doing abroad and maybe publish it.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, for instance, somebody from Princeton, he is in Trinidad on summer vacation, and he is doing research with us. He's doing research with an insurance company on data analytics through TTLAB. So I think the fact that they've heard good stories from other students is what have benefited us. And they now when I say benefit, there's no financial benefit.
Right.
As I said, I don't make any money off of TTLAB, and this has been an issue within UE, but because some people think I am making tons of money, but no, there's no money making within TTLAB. It's all geared towards providing students with a research environment, and any money involved is between the company and the student directly for internships.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that that's the I think it's something that was needed, and because it exists, people are attracted to it. And the of course the issue has now become that it's so big, it's a little bit difficult for me to manage by myself in terms of supervision. But yeah, that's one of the issues I have right now.
Okay, which leads me then to some of the challenges that TTLAB faces. So I guess clearly, as you said, based on the sheer number of students and scholars, etc., who you're supervising as the director, that is something that I guess probably needs to be addressed. But what might be some of the other challenges that TTLAB faces?
Okay, but I would like TTLAB to be and the principal of the university has asked about this already, about bringing TTLAB within the UA environment. Now, TTLAB is not an official entity; it's an ad hoc group. There's no funding, as I said, except for travel grants by my company, and so there has been some discussions between myself and the principal of making it more formal within the UE, but that would have to be under certain conditions, such as the ability to have control as I have right now. Not that I'm a control freak, but once, for instance, if for instance a company comes to me and say, okay, we need to have 5 interns, can you suggest 5 people? I could do that immediately. If we had to do it through UE, for instance, it would mean forming a committee and having that committee meet and interview people, etc., which I can understand in certain situations. Yeah, you would need to have something transparent as that. But in this particular case, where we need to react quickly for that company, a more flexible approach is needed.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, though, the university has been talking about setting up a center for AI. I've been pushing for that as well. And if we do form a center for AI and we can use a model similar to TTLAB, then we can now have more supervisors involved, etc.
Right.
Now, I do have other faculty members involved in helping supervise students. The issue is that most of them would be working in their particular area. So,
Mm-hmm.
like for instance, in smart grids, I have a colleague in electrical engineering helping supervise people in smart grids. But in terms of having people who can sort of supervise on a more global level, it's not that easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
So but I enjoyed, and there's a waiting list of about 10 people asking to do research, and I'm trying to find problems for them. But yeah, so those are the challenges. Are nice challenges to have.
Mm-hmm.
um, and if we could form sort of a center within UE where I don't have to worry about the funding issues, so I don't have to worry about internships and all that. If we could have the companies fund this institute or center and use those funds for students to do research for the company, both would benefit.
Absolutely. And I think I'm winding down now. And my next question is probably not so much geared at TT Lab, but more from a regional perspective, having spoken about research and innovation. And my question is, if we consider innovation as a spectrum, as you had even said earlier on, ranging from doing absolutely nothing to being the most innovative, where, you basically, probably starting to develop some sort of concept or, initiative from scratch. Why is it important for us in the region to aspire to be the most innovative or to be most innovative?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure who will want to do that, because it's yeah, you just can't say we want to be the most innovative without having the infrastructure in place, without having the human resources in place, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Now my feeling is we would never be able to compete in certain areas. We can't do the type of research Google or Facebook would do.
Right.
So we have to pick our problems to solve. It can't be too trivial, so like sometimes you hear about governments talking about, oh, we are innovative because we developed this app and etc., which is relatively straightforward stuff. So we don't want to be too much on that extreme, and we cannot be on the other extreme of too difficult. We don't want to solve problems that Google is working on because we can't compete.
Mm-hmm.
We have to focus on stuff in between and come up with novel solutions to problems that third world countries face. Because if we could do that, we would solve it for ourselves, but then we could export it to other countries as well. So we have to look for those unique problems that we need solving ourselves, and other countries similar to us also need solving, but problems that are of no interest to the Googles and Facebooks out there, because, as I said, if it's something of interest to them, it's very difficult for us to compete. Not because we don't have bright people, but because we don't have the resources to compete at that level.
Okay. And what about, I guess, one of the things that I think, and you probably would have heard it before, I guess in the Caribbean, we are so much about not reinventing the wheel, where we're probably quite content to have something that probably comes off the shelf or some solution that another party has developed, but then we are prepared to just tweak it to our needs. And one may argue that in doing so, it may not necessarily be fully solving your problem, but you have sought to you found a way to make do without doing a whole lot of effort. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, yeah, I have some strong feelings on that, because I see that happen a lot. Some of the local companies, like the utility companies, would purchase software and they only need 10% of that software, but they paid for the full 100%, so it's costing them millions of dollars. And on the other hand, although they're only using 10% of the software, it doesn't have the rest of the needs or functionality that they would need. And so they're using the software partially and paying big bucks for it. So I am always of the thought that in many cases, and I'm not saying all cases, in many cases we could develop and build a solution geared towards our particular environment. We're a small island, so in many cases we don't need a full-blown cloud solution to something, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
A simpler single server solution is fine enough. So the next issue, of course, is that by importing software all the time, we never learn.
Mm-hmm.
So we may be able to build something that is not as fancy as what you would get abroad, but in the process of doing that, we develop expertise. So our student people develop the expertise, and next time around it will be even better, etc., etc. But without that first start, we will never learn, and we will never have the ability to do this stuff on our own. And so I am always pushing for developing our own solutions. But as I said, in certain cases we can't for various reasons. But I would say in I don't know, maybe 60-70% of the cases we can, especially at the university. We use software that we could have developed ourselves and come up with a much better solution, because it would be geared specifically for our needs as opposed to a more generic solution.
Absolutely. And with that, thank you again, Prof. This is always an enlightening conversation that we end up having. And innovation is something that I think is quite close to my heart, because, I do think that we talk about it a lot in the region, but whether or not we're actually doing it or recognize what it takes to do it, I'm not always sure.
And I am in a full agreement with that. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thanks again, Bisha, for having me.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.